you meet men of very different backgrounds and very different understandings. And you can soon see the men that are not getting on with their vision and their purpose and their plan because they're blaming their fathers. And other men who can see that their fathers have got problems, but they get on with the job.
Dad, conversation number 7, father and son. Good to see you again.
Can you believe it? And you, sure, 7. Excellent.
Yeah, time's going fast, and we might be just being number 8 with your grandson, my son Noah. He's at least agreed to try it out and see how it goes. So that's kind of exciting. He's over in LA at the moment, so we'll be spreading a couple of time zones. But having 3 generations will definitely add something to this. So I really hope that that can work out.
Yeah, that'll be great. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this has really been research for me. As you know, maybe people listening don't know yet, but I'm busy writing a book. And the book is going to be about tradition and traditional male roles, where
Oh,
absolutely central for those is the son, the brother, the husband, and the father. And I have limited experience of these, but it's been a real learning process for me to be writing this book and having these conversations with you. And in our last 2 conversations, we spoke about some concepts, which were one of them was about the father wound. And the second thing we spoke about was kind of like as you grow older and get to know your father, then you start relating to him as another man. Um, and as I was kind of researching for these ideas and thinking how to integrate them into the book, then I was really looking at, okay, how do I connect these into tradition and traditional understanding of men's roles, especially through Orthodox Christian tradition? And what I really found is that neither of those ideas had any foundation whatsoever in traditional masculinity or manhood in that understanding. And so I've come to really think a little bit about it. And I wanted to talk to you about it as well again, Dad, is like, how should we understand? Maybe we should start with that one about the father wound or how to kind of see that and as a modern psychological term and how that contrasts with like a Christian view.
yeah, I must say it's a term that I'm certainly not familiar with. It's not something that I've grown up with or ever understood as a young man or even as an older man. Never come across it really until fairly recently.
Mhm.
So the idea of a father wound maybe to me just simply means, okay, my dad wasn't perfect. There were some things he did that I didn't appreciate or didn't like and or, felt bad about or whatever the case might be. But there's just this underlying principle for me that you honor your father and your mother. That doesn't mean that you accept everything that they do or you just, sort of let everything go. But they are who they are. They've done the best they can. And my responsibility as a son is honor my father.
Mhm.
And that's just something that you do.
Yeah.
And you don't find excuses for it particularly.
Yeah. And there's no qualification for it whatsoever. When it says it in
No.
scripture, then it's not like, honor your father until you reach a certain age or if he's a good and godly man. It's
Yeah.
always just you just honor your father irrespective of who he is, what your circumstances are, and also irrespective of if you there's aspects of his, fatherhood that you think are unjust or unfair or something like that.
Yeah. So, in other words, how can I put it? You don't have to just accept everything because you realize your dad is not a perfect man. And you can understand that, but you still honor him because of who he is. He's your father.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and I think
And
that
if we're going to talk
applies.
about
Yeah.
fatherhood, then the thing that comes up for me is that, like, I notice, and I think many people notice that when they have children, then it's the things that their parents did that they didn't like, which they tend to do themselves automatically without thinking about it, right? And so there is some kind of repetition happening. And I think if we don't honor and respect our parents, then we tend to blind ourselves to the ways that we do that, actually.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I particularly see in families that have been where there's been abuse, then often that abuse repeats itself. What I've also found is that if I just accept what my parents were and I realize the things that I felt they didn't do the way that I did them, then I'm more aware of now not doing that myself. So, for example, my dad hardly ever spoke to us, hardly ever hugged us. I didn't make a conscious decision to say, oh, I've got to speak to my boys. I didn't make a conscious decision to say, I've got to hug my boys. And yet, I just knew that's not the way I wanted to treat my sons. So, in a sense, there was a pattern that I could say that doesn't repeat. But then there are other things that I do find repeat. And sometimes you have to then say, oh, hang on a minute, why am I doing that? And sometimes, okay, I realize I'm just doing that because that's what my father did. I haven't really thought about this. I haven't really put my mind to it. I haven't really applied myself here. And when you do, then you say, okay, I've caught myself in a sense in the trap of repeating. And if I realize that, then I can, do something about it. But I do seem to think it's far more repetitive in abusive environments than in loving environments.
Yeah, absolutely. But would you say then there's some kind of boundary? Because what I think is, there's obviously a risk or a danger. You see some people who kind of like obsessing about this idea of the father wound. And I think that's what I kind of wanted to just recorrect with this conversation here, because some people, you can then just a little bit too much focus on that actually starts taking away from your agency and your ability to actually just do the right thing, which is often right, simple, and right in front of you. Because then you start, oh, the father wound, oh, trauma, oh, da 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 da, and then you start like going into some kind of like very therapeutic approach to yourself that stops you from just like stop doing what you're doing kind of thing, right? Stop self sabotaging.
Yeah, you get into the blame game. And so, my father's the one who's to blame for what I am. Instead of saying, hang on a minute, I can take responsibility for me and I can understand, but I must take responsibility. So it's an escape thing often. And yeah, people do have difficulties. They do have bad examples, but you can find a good example and you can follow it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, don't play the blame man.
Don't play the blame game, but instead, I mean, for me, fatherhood and just male companionship, it's very much about bringing perception in line with reality. And
Yeah,
reality is that life is not fair, right? Like with your mom,
yeah,
you always expect like fairness and compassion and getting an extra chance, whereas I think that's something that a father uniquely can and should teach his sons. And sometimes, you'll actually find some, Christian teachings where fathers are encouraged to, I'm thinking specifically about St. John Chrysostom, third century bishop, who encourages fathers to test their sons, to expose their sons to unfair behavior, take him to a wrestling game where he's going to get totally, smashed, and like to just teach him that like life is hard and it's gonna hit
yeah,
you hard sometimes, and you need to learn to be able to stand up again, because we're gonna
yes,
fall sometimes, and so that's the
yeah,
kind of, yeah, quality.
yeah. Don't wrap them too much in cotton wool. So two things come to my mind. One, the story of Abraham and Isaac.
Hmm.
Isaac was not a little boy when he took him to sacrifice him, and the respect from Isaac. There's never a question. There's father, we've got this, we've got that, we haven't got this, and then there's just this submission and respect to his father. So it's the one thing that comes up. The other thing that comes up for me is this whole association here in Manifesto Core, where you meet men of very different backgrounds and very different understandings. And you can soon see the men that are not getting on with their vision and their purpose and their plan because they're blaming their fathers. And other men who can see that their fathers have got problems, but they get on with the job. And to me, there was a great opportunity to mix with men coming from very different backgrounds and to see how they now, encourage each other to say, come on, you're a man, you're standing on your own feet, get going.
Hmm. Yeah, blaming their fathers, blaming their ex-wives, blaming all kinds of different people, but yeah, absolutely, that's one of the key aspects that I realized quite early on, is that um, as men, we often tend to see all the problems and evils in the world as something outside. We blame it on everything else. And so
Yeah.
being able to take ownership, clearly state in front of other men, and this is what we do on Manifesto Core, our network of online groups, right? Is you clearly state like, this is what I want to working on. This is the habit I'm trying to implement. I want to, start running more. I want to be reading this book. I want to be starting this new work initiative. And then like actually doing it and being accountable
Yeah.
to another group of men. And then when I fail, then you see like some men just no end of rationalizations and explanations that
Yeah.
come. And when you say like, hey, like, you know, we're not interested in your explanations about why you didn't do it. We just want to know like when are you going to do it? And some
Yeah.
men
Yeah.
they love that and appreciate it because they want to grow, and other men they can't handle it and then they leave because they simply, so it's quite quick, after 3 months or something like that, most guys figure out like, is this something that I can handle or not? Because they get confronted with their own. We all have it. We all have a lack of ability to actually execute on the things that we think we want, right? And
Yeah.
and I think that's the kind of paternal love that men can give to each other.
Yeah. And one can't say there are never any other reasons for things to go wrong. There are, and we can understand that. But you can very soon see if a man is just making excuse after excuse after excuse. I mean, and don't play that game. And that's got to do, I think, with honoring my father. Because if I honor my father, I'm not going to go about blaming him for everything that's wrong in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I need to take responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of cases, people need to readjust their expectations. Most men
Yeah.
generally have far too high expectations. I think it's some kind of form of pride, uh, based off. I think, speaking for myself, I, you know, lived a little bit in a fantasy world, thinking of myself incredibly highly as someone who deserved all kinds of amazing life circumstances. And when I'm able to just like kind of let go of a lot of that and be able to realize like I don't really know what I want from my life. I don't really know what I need to do in my life, but I know that if I was just able to do this habit, like I'm living on a farm, if I was able to just like do 15 minutes of farm work every single day when I first came here, that was tough. I was used to sitting behind a computer and sending out emails to the whole world and having these big philosophical ideas, but like, fixing a door or, putting plugging a hole in the roof or something like that. That's difficult. Doing it together with my wife as well, having to communicate about these things that aren't working properly and whatever, right? Learning basic handyman skills. That was tough, right? And so being able to bring my attention to that every single day, it took some time. Took some time, but it's been incredibly rewarding of just having that
Yeah.
little bit more of a connection to physical reality, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And too few men perhaps get into that. And I suppose in this computerized world and digital world, it's easy just to get into that easy digital way of doing things. But one of the things you should also do is go and check out the practical YouTube video and copy it and do it yourself.
Which YouTube video?
Well, in general, there are lots of
Oh,
handyman
yeah,
things that
yeah.
tell you how to fix this and how to do that. And so go and check it out and get
Yeah.
stuck in and do it.
It's quite something actually. I got to say, yeah, I do that a lot as well. It's like no, just 2 weeks ago we discovered that all of our fruit trees have been girdled, which means that a little mouse has eaten the bark all the way around the base of all of these trees,
Wow.
and that actually means that the tree dies because normally
Yes.
so the nutrients from the soil goes up into the leaf through the stem, but then all the stuff from the leaves goes down to the roots through the bark. And
Bark.
so if the bark is broken all the way around, you actually can't do it. But there's something then called bridge grafting, which entails taking a little twig
Ah,
and grafting a twig over the girdle, the full girdle.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so that's my next task to be doing out here
Next
on the
project.
farm.
Very good.
The funny
Excellent.
things that one learns when you live on a little farm.
Well, that's news to me. I thought, well, oh my goodness, that's tickets. So there's a way to bridge it.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah, you helped us plant those trees, so
Yeah.
so
I want to see them bearing fruit next summer we come.
yeah, exactly.
Good.
Okay, good. Well, thanks very much, Dad. Greatly appreciated. And yeah, we'll hopefully have Noah along for our next conversation. Maybe it'll take two conversations. You never know. An 18-year-old, it's hard for him to organize his calendar always.
I'm sure, but that'll be great. Good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.